Hi there, I'm Janel Schalk and I lead enablement and sales for security at Trace3, and I'm excited to welcome you back to Secure Correspondence Season 2. It feels like in today's world, you can't have a conversation about cybersecurity without also touching on zero trust. We're going to dig into why zero trust is so hot right now, what zero trust actually means and what it's not, how different types of businesses are utilizing zero trust in their security postures, and how to set yourself up for success while adopting a zero trust model. It's a lot, and we're going to get started. So I have Megan Guth with me today. Megan has more than 17 years of experience in IT and cybersecurity, including systems administration, endpoint and data security, cloud security, security program development, and as an enterprise architect. Before we get started, Megan, one of my favorite things about you is that you love a good life hack. So please share a life hack that you learned recently so you can help me hack my life.
I do love life hacks. So one of those things that I never seem to keep up with is all those maintenance tasks that has to be done with, my car, pet care, my home. So what I did is I created a separate digital calendar where I can track all of those tasks. And because it's a separate calendar, I can hide it when I don't want to look at it, but it's there when I need it. So as a handy reference.
I love that. I'm going to use that starting tonight. So back to business. Megan, everyone is talking about zero trust. What is a zero trust model?
So zero trust, what it is, it's a re-architecture of the environment, and it's going to allow for immediate validation of access and authorization at every step between the end user and the data. And it's also doing continuous check-ins throughout the session.
Mm.
This validation needs to be based on risk and real-time intelligence as much as possible, because zero trust means you're not accepting any of the prior steps as an assumption of trust or proof that that resource has passed your inspection points. So a good example of this is using network drives for file storage. So without zero trust, kind of in the old traditional models, once an endpoint has been granted access to the corporate network, either through a physical connection like an Ethernet cable or a VPN, then it's also signed in with their username and password, they would have access to those files and folders within that network drive. Now, there may be permissions on separate folders, different files, right, that have been set ahead of time, but those are static permissions, and those aren't taking into account any risk. When we apply zero trust, that means we're validating other things like, is the laptop secure? Has it been checked for malware? Is it fully patched and up to date? We also look at analytics. Is the user signing in from a place they typically sign in, or is this an unusual location, such as a different country? All of those things are part of the validation for zero trust.
Yeah, I think it's really also important to understand what it's not. And it's not a one-stop shop where it's a single answer, a single product that's miraculously going to fix everything in your ecosystem, right? But more like a concept, like you said, with real-time validation throughout that user session based on risk, which I just want to really underscore what you're saying there. Zero trust is all about risk-based decisioning in real time and making all the pieces and parts in your technology stack together work together effectively. It's a concept, not a single product, though there are, of course, lots of products out there that can help with it. So if you do a quick search on zero trust right now, you're going to see a ton of different headlines about the rise of zero trust adoption. Is zero trust just a fad? I hesitate to even say that because we've been saying the words zero trust now for at least a decade. I remember many years ago presenting on this topic actually at an identity conference. So is it the way of the future? What makes adopting a zero trust model right now so attractive, do you think, Megan?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer for me is flexible work or remote
Mm.
work or hybrid work. And I'm old enough to remember when it was called telecommuting, when we used telephone lines and modems to connect to our corporate network. And really, for the most part today, all of our computer tasks that we do for our jobs can be done anywhere with an internet connection. And in the past, that security strategy of having a walled garden approach, you might have heard, or having a hard outer network and a soft interior network, that's how we practice security. So really, a lot of the focus was on that kind of external boundary, but inside, maybe some of the security controls weren't as robust as we'd like them to be. So what happened is everyone went off that corporate network. And in that case, we really need to start thinking about how we change our risk model for information security. There's also multi-cloud, right? That's a strategy that's becoming more and more popular. And what that means is that work is happening in partnership with several different cloud providers across a variety of networks, all with different controls and configurations that you have to adapt to.
Yeah, I love it. I like what you said around moving from a model that's hard on the outside and soft on the inside, like a Tootsie Roll pop, and moving more to like a toffee piece of toffee. We want to be hard. We want to be have controls and hardened everywhere throughout our ecosystem. So I really like that analogy. So Megan, you mentioned another trending topic, multi-cloud adoption. It's early in the year still, but we've heard this phrase 2023 is the year of multi-cloud. I'm hearing a lot of vendors are saying, a lot of analysts are saying it. Can you shed some light on how Zero Trust combines with a multi-cloud adoption strategy to set organizations up for success?
Yeah, so a zero trust strategy is going to allow an organization to kind of create their own architecture around what the vendor may provide. So it's really allowing them to apply some vendor agnostic security principles. When you do it as an architecture in zero trust, you're not assuming that at any point that cloud provider has, appropriately applied or even has those security settings that you need. And when you're doing right those multiple points of validation, based on risk for zero trust, then you're actually, being able to check in and say, is this still valid? Did my cloud provider do this step all along the process? And what you're doing is essentially leveling the playing field among multiple cloud providers because you're applying your own checks over what they may have, and it's going to create that consistency between when, where, and how that validation occurs.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense. So Zero Trust whole thing is never trust, always verify. And I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there that find this a little daunting, even for industry veterans. What are some of the ways that security leaders can begin to set their organizations up for success in a Zero Trust model? Like, how do we, what are your thoughts around those initial steps that can help take them down the path to being Zero Trust?
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard it before, but you can't protect what you don't know. And that's really true here as well, right? You have to understand your business workflows. You have to know, what's happening so that you can put those rules or guardrails around what's going on. You need to know, who are your workers? What are they doing? What applications are they touching? What data are they accessing? When are they accessing these things? A good example would be like an accounting team, right? They're going to need certain data to do their job, like around tax time. They may need payroll data, locations of employees. Maybe they only need this once a month, but they don't need it the rest of the time. And certainly they don't need access to, the entire file of HR. They just need pieces and parts of it. So once you kind of understand what that access needs to be, then you can start to create some rules around that or technical policies to start checking for enforcement. So rather than give them access to everything, we're giving them access only what they need to do with their job, and we're using those principles of zero trust to kind of navigate through that. But I do want to mention too that, all of our existing best practices, such as, least privilege, those still apply with zero trust. We're not throwing away the whole rule book when it comes to security. We're just adding on and making sure that we're creating these checkpoints and this additional risk-based validation throughout the process. And then really once you understand your environment, that's when you can start thinking about what your strategy should be for zero trust, because every organization is different, right? But some of the common strategies that we've seen are focusing on identity and access governance and microsegmentation. Those are some big areas that really apply a lot of value because they're good, solid foundations for zero trust architecture, or really any architecture.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I just want to touch back on a couple of things that you said. So you mentioned, least privilege access, static access, or access that may be required only at specific times of year or during specific types of projects. And I love, how to think about zero trust as a way of combining static access with risk-based policies that can either enable or do just-in-time provisioning of access when things are needed, or perhaps not allow access when it doesn't map to the schedule, the expected schedule of when things are doing, unless you follow some kind of exception process. So that's all really great points. Just wanted to underscore a few of those. So at Trace3, we've worked together with other amazing subject matter experts to build our zero trust methodology and framework, Megan. Can you walk us through the 6 domains of zero trust according to that framework and the key supplemental areas for each of those domains?
Yeah, so the 6 domains that we look at are data, device, identity, applications, infrastructure, and network. And so those are the key 6 domains. And we also make sure that we focus on governance, visibility analytics, and automation orchestration. So when we're talking about data, right, we're talking about is it structured data, unstructured data, where does it live? Is it within the cloud? Is it on-prem? And then devices, are they managed, unmanaged? IoT, making sure we have a good asset inventory. In identity space, we're talking about, MFA, SSO, passwordless authentication, all those aspects of identity governance. And for applications, we look at SaaS applications, on-prem applications, really evaluating also the CI/CD pipeline and DevSecOps. For infrastructure, we're talking about containers, microsegmentation, those types of services. On the network level, we're looking at firewalls, traffic monitoring, third-party connectivities. So all of those domains come together, and we have the governance for each of those. So making sure we have an understanding again of what the business needs to do, what the technical bits and policies need to do to support those business goals. And then for visibility, right, once you kind of understand what you're pulling together, we're looking at threat intelligence feeds, behavior analytics, things that are captured by a SIEM, discovery, all of those aspects. And then once you have the visibility and the governance, you can start to do that automation orchestration. That's really key to zero trust to get you to that real-time evaluation. Things such as automated policies, machine learning, a SOAR system, or an automated security response system, load balancing, those types of controls that are going to give you that complete automation, because we can't have humans making these decision points. It's just not scalable.
Yeah. Well, that was a fantastic overview, and thank you. And it really shows there's lots of different pieces and parts, but they make sense. And a lot of our listeners, their organizations probably have many of those components in place today, and it's all about making them talk to each other, effectively sharing that information, and doing that real-time analysis so that those risk-based policies can be applied. So thanks so much for that overview. And thank you, Megan. Your insight has been invaluable. Thank you so much for joining me today. So for our listeners, if you have any questions about Zero Trust, you can reach me, Megan, and the Trace3 security team at security@trace3.com. And remember to tune back in for the next episode of Trace3 TV's Season 2 for discussions on wireless security, executive privacy and security, and more great cybersecurity topics. So for now, I'm Janel Schalk. I'm wishing you well and letting you know that Trace3 Security has you covered.